Okay, so we got 2 films to watch this week, because the first placer is a short film, and then I figured, well, let's take the second placer, and that was also a short film. The first film that came up was Meeting the Man, James Baldwin in Paris, which is from 1970, directed by Terrence Dixon, though it's a documentary, so I suppose there is direction, because you need to prod the subject of the documentary with certain questions and whatnot. And James Baldwin is, kind of a bit of an intellectual titan, so he's difficult to prod in a specific direction. This is going to be different from anything else I've done so far, because this is not a narrative. This is a conversation, and a conversation that honestly was hostile at times. The interviewers, they wanted to talk to James Baldwin in Paris. He'd moved there in the 40s, 1948. He spoke at one point about moving there when he had only $40 to his name, and he spoke about He spoke about having to do things to survive. He said he sold a bunch of his clothes, he had to sell his typewriter, and as a writer, obviously that's a big deal. And he just ends with, I can't tell you the things that one has to do to survive in these streets unless you've had to do it yourself. And if you haven't had to do it, then if you haven't had to do it, I can't explain it to you, and if you have had to do it, then I don't need to explain it to you. So, clearly a difficult time. He came out of it in the end, and went on to produce several very large books. For instance, Go Tell It on the Mountain, that's one of his. He spoke very frankly about the issues that he faced as a black man, both in America and in Paris. He describes how he was taken in by basically the Algerian quarter and looked after, because France has a history with Africa, obviously. I don't know how to compare it to the history that America has had with Africa, but the fact that at the time that this was happening, at the time that they recorded this, Algeria had only recently stopped being technically part of France. Algeria straight up, had seats in the French, Senate? Whatever their equivalent is. But, the natives there didn't really have equal rights. So, very messed up relationship. And so the people there, they knew what, to a degree, what he had gone through, and he said straight up, they asked him at one point, hey, why did you leave America? And he said, they were having a meeting with him and a bunch of other people who had left America for Paris, and they were all, in the same space, and they're like, oh, how would you like to, compare why you left with why James left, to one of the folks there, and they're just like, it wouldn't make a difference. It's personal to us. And James just says to them, I left because I was going to be murdered there. I mean that I could not have hoped to live if I had stayed there. Now, this is a statement that it speaks about the behavior of the state as murder, as reasonably should. He talks about police violence, and how him and his entourage are all people who they could be murdered tomorrow just for the color of their skin. And you have to keep in mind, this is happening in 1970. He is just a few years out from the high-profile assassinations of both of these men were his friends, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. He knew both of these people. There's pictures of him with both of these men, and both of them dead. He is he speaks about how he's lived this. He's known people like all of these folks that he's hanging out with here in Paris all his life, and half of them are dead now. So he's been through it, and he has cause to complain. The interviewer tries to steer the conversation at one point. James Baldwin takes them to the Bastille to get a bit in front of it, and they're like, they ask him, why? So what does the Bastille mean to you? And he proceeds to talk about how this was a prison that the French people had torn down at one point, but it's clearly still there, and that he himself is also hoping to tear down a prison, but that if a European tears down a prison, they do it for their freedom, but if he does it, it's because he's a savage. And then his entourage gets upset with the interviewer and is like, you didn't ask him the question right. We agreed on a certain question. So, why don't you ask him the question right? And they're like, well, we did ask him. Like, oh, you didn't ask him. It was like they wanted him to ask the question verbatim. And the question that he wound up posing to them verbatim was, why do you think that Bastille is the most popular tourist destination in France today? Which James Baldwin just says, well, it's not the most popular. They're like, well, then why did we have to ask it that way? I can understand a little bit of frustration there. But, also, you're getting access to a very high-profile person. It seems like there was a combative attitude from his entourage, and that he didn't quite know. Being back in Paris seemed to have put him somewhat on his heels a bit. Because, he obviously has experiences with the city. He lived there for years, and then he left. And he's they're trying to get a bit out of me because this is the place where I made my name, I guess. And I don't know. It's awkward. They say you can't go back, and they're trying to bring him back. Yeah. I don't know. I can't speak about the whole. I can't speak about the because there's no narrative here, So all I can really do is speak about James Baldwin. At the time, he was, in his 50s, ish, somewhere in that area. Just a queer black writer who had been thrust into the spotlight by his own success, and who wrote about what he knew, and that was provocative at the time. The plight of black people in America and in Europe, and the plight of the queer community too, and that was reflected in his writing. A lot of his stories featured, if not, I think all of them featured, black protagonists, but also queer protagonists as well. God. And it's wild that, he's talking about this stuff in the 70s, and it's still an issue today, if people can talk about, oh, well, this is just a thing in the South. No, he's from New York. The issues he faced back then are still present now, and it's wild. I am not equipped to speak about what he speaks on. Read his books, watch his other films. There've been adaptations. He's done. He's given speeches. God, I'm just gonna leave this section off with something he said at one point. It is certain, in any case, that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Take from that what you will.
Well, where do we go from here, then?
I would tell you if I could. I really would.
I know you would. We would tell you if we could.
Our second film for the evening is Ghosts, or in the original Portuguese, Fantasmas. I have probably butchered the pronunciation. It's directed by André Nové Oliveira. It is a Brazilian film. It is short, and it's from 2010. It's on the list because it's actually from the 2010s. That's the criteria that I stuck that in there for. I don't know what I expected here. It is one continuous shot from a rooftop across the street to a gas station. There's just two fellas sitting on a rooftop, hanging out. We never see them. We just know that they are hanging out there. And they're watching the street. The gas station is over there. People are going about their business. You know, I don't see anybody. I don't know that we saw anybody fill up their car, but we see traffic go by. A few buses. A fella on a bike at one point. And they're just the two guys on the roof. We just get their conversation. They're talking about, you know, the one guy seems to be trying to get the other guy to go out and do something. He invites him to go play soccer with him. He's like, yeah, somebody I know is like setting up a league, and he needs two more guys. And he said, hey, maybe you and your friend could play. So I figured, yeah, me and you, let's go do it. And you know, he's even like, I'll pay you. I'll pay your entrance fee or something like that. You know, they're talking about you gotta lend me $10 and I'll get you back out on the soccer pitch. He lets slip at one point that, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I ran into your sister-in-law at the place, and you know, yeah, she's doing good. She said you haven't been getting that much, you know. He's like, oh yeah, I know. She's doing okay then. Yeah, and you know, they're talking about how it's been a while since they've been up there. It was like a barbecue that they were at before, and that's the last time they'd hung out on the rooftop. And then the guy notices that the fella who isn't getting out much, he's got a camera, and he's just recording, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing with that camera? And it sort of, he ends up telling his friend, oh, you know, I'm just recording the street, you know. I saw this girl out there in a black car the other day, and so, you know, I'm just recording, you know, because she was out there the other day. And he's just like, your ex? So he's just filming the street on the off chance that his ex drives by. And like the friend who's there trying to get him out of the house is like, you know, yeah, she put you through hell, dude, but it's been 3 years. Like, get on with it. Stop letting her control your life. You know, what are you gonna do? You know, even if she does drive by. And she drives by. And they're just like, he zooms the camera in, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's her. And he's like, okay, yeah, that's her. And she drives off. He's like, all right, well, now what are you gonna do? Oh, you know, I just wanted to get her, you know, on tape, and then, you know, I can forget about it, you know? Haha. And then another car pulls up, and then the tape reverses. So the other car pulls away, and then the girl comes back, and then he's like, oh yeah, that is her. And then she drives off. And then the tape reverses. Oh yeah, that is her. And then she drives off. And then the tape reverses. And that happens like a bunch more times. And then the credits roll. And so like, at first, we thought that we were getting this conversation between these two friends candidly while the recording was happening. And then we find out, no, we are actually watching the recording as it is being perceived by the fella who doesn't get out much. He is just rewinding the tape to watch his ex for the 5 seconds she's on camera. And that's messed up. That's messed up, man. Oh my god. At 2010, you know, this was pre-Gamergate, you know. This is creep behavior, and it's a statement about the surveillance that we are constantly underneath. You know, because everybody always thinks, you know, oh, stores have cameras, you know, there's cameras on the outside of buildings and whatnot, everybody's got a phone on them that has a camera at all times, but also, there's just people who like to film things. It's all the time, you know? It's the concept of the panopticon. We are in it, and we are just constantly being watched. And, like, here we see somebody who's just, on the off chance that his ex drives by, he's going to spend all day recording a street corner. And then, like, I guess he's abandoned everything else in his life to the pursuit of watching for his ex to drive by. And, like, at that point, this has just consumed him. I don't care what she did at that point. You know, at that point, he's just making things worse for himself. Like, there's nothing to gain from this behavior. Yeah, take your life back, man. Just forget about her. You know, sometimes, you know, when they say that the best revenge is living well, this is 100% the situation where that guy needs that advice and he needs to follow it. Because, like, what is he doing reviewing the footage of her driving by for like 10 minutes? Just, it's not healthy behavior. You know, I don't have any better way to describe it. Yeah, but that was just a short 10-ish minutes. So we got 2 short ones this week. A documentary about a writer who struggled with racial inequality and queer liberation, and in a time when that was very much an issue. Like, I mean, James Baldwin was born in the 20s. You know, he was coming into his own as a writer in the 40s. You know, he went to Paris in 48. So, like, you know, he's on the forefront of the civil rights movements. So, like, yeah. So that we have that, and we also just have commentary on the pervasiveness of surveillance and who's watching these cameras and for what purpose. And is it a little bit messed up, the purpose why people are watching these cameras? You know, that's what we got this week. And hey, we'll find out what we got next week right now. 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Alright, they're down into the horse plinko. Here they go. The movies are off. Okay. Out front is Seven Samurai, followed by Monsieur Hulot, followed by My Colt is a Passport, Half a Loaf of Kung Fu, then Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Am I going to be watching? Oh god, things are flying way ahead. Charade, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, Fellini Satyricon, and Never Weaken are all out, having flown off into the abyss. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday is out front now, because these guys down here are going on a loop. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, then The Heroic Trio, Jane B. Par Agnes V. Jane B. Par Agnes V is out. There goes Vampire. Alright. We are still... there's loops here. That's going to slow these guys down a little bit. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday is still out front, I think. Yeah, okay. These guys are going to come down, but we have an obstacle here to slow these guys down. The Heroic Trio has now entered the front. Monsieur Hulot's Holiday got stuck. Very stuck. It's still up here in the spinny deal. Okay. On the spirals, it is difficult to say who's going to be coming out first. It's probably going to be the Heroic Trio, though. The Heroic Trio out first. Alright, can you round this corner? Are we getting a martial arts action film? We are getting martial arts. First place, the Heroic Trio. Second place, Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Dead Calm, Half a Loaf of Kung Fu, Cecil B. Demented, After Hours, My Favorite Software is Being Here, Sweet Smell of Success, Three Women, and then our original first placer, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Everything's trickling in now. Here comes Phantom of the Monastery, our film from the 30s. The Linguini Incident, another David Bowie. Fear City, which I have watched. Black Sunday, I don't remember anything about it. Here comes The Hit. Night Moves, The Doom Generation. Pulling up the tail here. Here comes Brazil. Seventh Seal and Teo Rema are all coming in too. Yeah, here they come. The Stragglers. The Seventh Seal is last place, as long as you don't count things that fell to their deaths. Yeah, our winner officially, the Heroic Trio. All right, let's... Excuse you. Let me pull up my movie list, just so I can see. The Heroic Trio. What's the deal with the Heroic Trio? I remember a few things about it. A Heroic Trio from 1993. It is off of the list of cult movies that was recommended by Criterion. Directed by Johnny Toe. It is a fantasy adventure film. Somehow, inexplicably, 6.6 out of 10, and a respectable, very good 88 minutes long. An hour and a half. The ideal movie length. I always say this. Yeah, Heroic Trio, I believe, is it's a Hong Kong action film starring three ladies. This could be a fun watch for the server. We'll see what happens. Yeah, it's got what's her name from Everything Everywhere All at Once. I can't remember her name. But I remember seeing this thing and I'm like, this sounds amazing. You still haven't seen that? Okay, well, that's something we gotta remedy at some point. But yeah, that is the marble race. We have our winner there, the Heroic Trio.